Hello, young readers. Welcome to Story Time with me, your darling little narrator. If you like this channel, please subscribe and then click the bell to get notifications every time a new story is posted. Oh, and if you like a story, please smash that like button. Okay? Now, if you're ready, sit back, relax as we start our journey to story time. We have another classic in this episode. The name of this story is called Pinocchio. Once upon a time, there lived a poor cobbler named Geppetto. One day, Geppetto heard the carpenter who lived next door calling his name. "Geppetto, come see my wood," the carpenter shouted. "It talks when I try to saw it. How frightening!" "Give it to me," said Geppetto. "It will make a good puppet. I'll call him Pinocchio." Geppetto began at once to make the puppet. He carved a pair of eyes. Next, he carved a nose, but the nose kept growing longer, and Geppetto had to keep trimming it. When the nose finally stopped growing, it was longer than average. When Geppetto carved the mouth, the wood cried out, "Ouch! You're hurting me!" and stuck out its tongue at him. Then the new hands grabbed Geppetto's yellow wig. "You're not even finished yet," Geppetto said, "and already you're a very naughty little boy." When Geppetto had carved the legs, he showed the puppet how to walk. At once, Pinocchio ran through the door into the street. Poor Geppetto. He couldn't catch Pinocchio, and the villagers were not any help. They were too busy laughing. Finally, a policeman grabbed the runaway puppet and took it back to Geppetto. "I ought to box your ears," Geppetto gasped, out of breath. "Father, please don't be angry," Pinocchio begged, as he was afraid of the big policeman. Geppetto smiled. "Let's go home now, and I'll make some clothes for you." Soon, the puppet was dressed in a bright red paper suit and a little white hat. "I'm just like a real boy," Pinocchio said. "Perhaps someday you will be a boy instead of a puppet," Geppetto said. "But little boys have to behave themselves, show respect to their fathers, and go to school." "Then tomorrow I shall go," said Pinocchio, "and I shall become very small and learn how to help you when you grow old." "That would be very nice, but school books cost money," Geppetto said. But Pinocchio looked so sad that Geppetto put on his coat and went out. It had started to snow. When he returned, he was carrying a new school book, but his coat was gone. "Father, where's your coat?" Pinocchio asked. "I sold it," Geppetto replied. "It kept me too warm." "Oh, thank you, Father," Pinocchio said, hugging him. The next morning, Pinocchio skipped off happily to school. "Today, I will learn as much as I can. I will become so smart that I will be able to buy my father a new coat," he said to himself. But soon, the sounds of a brass band caught his attention. A puppet show was about to begin. "I want to see that," Pinocchio decided, forgetting all about school. But an usher stopped him at the door. "You need 5 pence to enter," he said. So Pinocchio sold his new school book to a junk dealer and bought a ticket to the show. Inside the tent, marionettes were dancing on the stage. Harlequin, their leader, spotted Pinocchio in the aisle. "Hello, dear friend," he shouted. "Come and join us." There was much confusion while Pinocchio tried to learn the dance steps. The audience grew impatient and called for the maestro of the show. Now, Maestro was a very tall man with fiery eyes. He had a huge head of silver hair that resembled a lion's and a voice that could roar. He mounted the stage in a fury. "You have disturbed my theater," he roared at Pinocchio, while the other puppets trembled with fear. "I shall deal with you after the show tonight." True to his word, that evening Maestro ordered Harlequin to bring him Pinocchio. "He is made of dry wood, and I need a good fire to warm me," Maestro said. "Oh no!" Harlequin pleaded. "Now!" Maestro thundered. "I shall have him now." So Pinocchio was dragged to the Maestro. Pinocchio began to cry, but Maestro was not moved. "Oh, Papa, I don't want to die," cried Pinocchio. Maestro looked hard at Pinocchio. "You have a father?" "Yes, and I miss him," Pinocchio said with much remorse, for he felt bad about selling his school book and missing school. "I'll spare you because you have family." "I'll burn Harlequin instead. He has no one," Maestro said. "No," Pinocchio cried, "you can't." And he stood in front of his new friend. Well, Maestro was so impressed by Pinocchio's loyalty that he decided to burn no one. Instead, he gave Pinocchio 5 gold coins. "Hurry home to your father now, and behave yourself," Maestro said. Pinocchio thanked the Maestro and said goodbye to Harlequin. On the way home, Pinocchio came upon a curious pair, a lame fox and a half-blind cat. "Hello, Pinocchio," they said. "How do you know my name?" asked Pinocchio. "We saw your father looking for you. He was shivering from the cold, although he wouldn't complain about it." "That's my fault," Pinocchio said. "He sold his only coat for me. Now I'm hurrying home to repay him with 5 gold coins." "Did you say 5 gold coins?" said the fox. "Yes, 5," Pinocchio said proudly. "How would you like to take him hundreds of coins?" asked the fox. "How is that possible?" asked Pinocchio. "We could take you to a secret place called the Field of Miracles," the cat suggested. "If you plant coins in the field after midnight, they will grow into tall money trees." Pinocchio believed them, so he went with the fox and the cat until they came to an inn. "We will rest here until midnight," the fox said. "Meet us downstairs at the stroke of 12. But when Pinocchio looked for them at midnight, there was no sign of the fox or the cat. "Your friends have gone," the innkeeper said, "and you, sir, had better pay their bill." Pinocchio paid an entire gold coin to the innkeeper and set off for home, sadder and a little wiser. Moments later, he was stopped by 2 hooded bandits. "Your money or your life," cried one who sounded very much like the fox. Pinocchio was scared, but he said nothing because he had hidden the last 4 coins under his tongue. No matter what the bandits did, Pinocchio refused to tell them where his money was. Finally, the bandits took out a noose and pulled it tighter and tighter around Pinocchio's neck. Still, he refused to speak, so they strung him up from a tree. "You can hang there until you talk or die. It's your choice. We'll be back soon," the bandit said and left him there. Pinocchio thought about Geppetto and was heartbroken. "Please, someone help me," he prayed. Now, a blue fairy who lived in a nearby castle, heard Pinocchio's silent plea and took pity on the puppet. She sent a hawk and a dog to rescue him. Together, they pecked and gnawed through the thick rope and carried Pinocchio back to the castle, where he was tucked into a cozy bed. The Blue Fairy called 3 doctors, and they prescribed a bitter medicine for Pinocchio. The Blue Fairy stroked Pinocchio's head and asked him what had happened. He told her the truth about almost everything, but as for his gold coins, he said, "I lost them." "Are you sure they're gone?" asked the fairy. Pinocchio nodded, but the truth was that he had stuck them in his pocket. Suddenly, his nose began to grow. The more he lied about the coins, the longer it grew. "Goodness, your nose grows when you lie, Pinocchio," the Blue Fairy said. Pinocchio was overcome with tears of shame. "Don't cry, Pinocchio," said the Blue Fairy. Clapping her hands twice, "Look, here are some woodpeckers. They'll adjust your nose." "Now, Pinocchio, remember, you must not tell any more lies, and you must be a very good boy. I might not always be around to help you," the Blue Fairy said. Then she gave Pinocchio more gold coins to take home to Geppetto. "Thank you for saving me. I'll never forget you," Pinocchio cried, hugging the Blue Fairy. So Pinocchio headed home again, but he soon ran into the fox and the cat. "What happened to you two?" "I had to pay the innkeeper for your lodging," Pinocchio said. "The innkeeper told us you left early because you were ill," the cat said. "Well, he lied. I tried to find you, but then I was almost killed by bandits on the road. Luckily, my money is still safe," Pinocchio said without thinking. "Come with us now to the Field of Miracles," urged the sly fox. Pinocchio decided to trust the cat and the fox once more. At the field, they told him how to plant and water the coins. "In 20 minutes, you'll have a tree, but you must not watch it or it will not grow," said the fox. "Why don't you walk into town with us and come back later?" As they parted company, Pinocchio said, "Thank you for all your help. We are only too glad to show someone how to make money without hard work," purred the cat. "Goodbye, dear Pinocchio." Pinocchio waited in town for a whole hour before returning to the Field of Miracles. He wanted to make sure his money had enough time to grow into a large tree. By the time he returned to the field, the moon had clouded over, making it difficult to see. Pinocchio looked for his money tree, but saw nothing. There was only a hole in the ground. "They robbed me! The fox and the cat stole it all!" cried Pinocchio. And he wept in the weak moonlight, feeling terribly alone. When Pinocchio finally returned home, he told Geppetto everything. Geppetto just hugged him tight and said, "I'm so happy you are home and safe at last." Pinocchio went to school every day for many weeks after that. Then one day a classmate named Carlo came up to him and whispered, "Tonight I'm going to Toyland with some other boys. It's a fairground with all sorts of toys and games and sweet cakes, and you'll never have to go to school." "I don't believe you," said Pinocchio. "Well, see for yourself at midnight." "I'll be waiting at the corner," Carlo insisted. At midnight, Pinocchio crept out of the house to meet Carlo. Soon, a tall wagon filled with boys came rolling up, and everyone cheered and said, "Hop on for Toyland!" Carlo jumped into the wagon and held his hand out to Pinocchio. For a second, Pinocchio hesitated. Then he forgot all his promises to the Blue Fairy and Geppetto and climbed in. The wagon was pulled by 8 donkeys, all wearing white boots. Pinocchio thought this was odd, so he bent forward for a closer look. One of the donkeys had tears running down his face. "Why is the donkey crying?" Pinocchio asked the wagon master. "Don't pay any attention, my boy. He's just jealous because you get to play while he works." When Pinocchio and Carlo reached Toyland, it was even more wonderful than they had imagined. There were carousels and jugglers and games. Hundreds of boys ran around hooting and hollering. "This is the life," sighed Pinocchio. "And we're not even allowed to say the word school or they'll throw us out," Carlo giggled. "Come on then, let's go on a ride," Pinocchio laughed. For 2 weeks, Pinocchio and Carlo played all day long, and Carlo never took a bath. But one morning, Pinocchio awoke with a strange feeling of something furry on his head. He raced to a mirror. He had grown donkey ears. Pinocchio ran to find Carlo, but when he saw Carlo, Pinocchio cried, "Oh no, not you too!" For there stood Carlo with large, fuzzy donkey ears. For a moment they stared at each other in shock. Then they began to laugh. "We look ridiculous," Carlo giggled. Then suddenly he stopped giggling. "Pinocchio, help me! I can't stand up straight!" Carlo cried in alarm. But poor Pinocchio was no better off. He and Carlo had turned into donkeys. Carlo and Pinocchio began to cry, but their sobs sounded like the braying of donkeys. "New donkeys," the wagon master said when he saw them. "Just what I needed. I'll sell Carlo to a farmer and Pinocchio to my friend who runs the circus." At the circus, Pinocchio was forced to jump through hoops of bright flames until he was exhausted. When he was too tired to jump any longer, the trainer beat him. One day, Pinocchio stumbled during his performance and twisted his leg. Poor lame Pinocchio could no longer jump through the hoops, so the trainer sold him to a man who wanted to use his skin to make a drum. His new master tied a rope around his neck and dragged him to the seashore. Pinocchio cried all the way. Then the man threw him into the ocean and waited patiently for him to drown. Pinocchio struggled under the water and prayed to the Blue Fairy one more time, although he felt unworthy of her help. The Blue Fairy heard Pinocchio's plea and sent a school of fish to rescue him. Presto! The donkey was gone, and Pinocchio was a puppet once more. But the man who wanted his skin was very angry when he pulled Pinocchio out the water. "I paid 20 gold pieces for you," the man shouted angrily. "Now I'll have to sell you for firewood." Seeing no other escape, Pinocchio dove back into the ocean. He swam away as fast as he could, heading far out to sea. He swam so far that he could no longer see the shore. The waves were so high that he could not see a huge fish approaching. Before he knew it, he was swimming into the open mouth of an enormous whale. With one great swallow, the whale gulped down Pinocchio deep into his belly. The whale's stomach was so huge that it looked like a large cavern. Strewn everywhere were parts of ships and ropes and anchors that the whale had swallowed. Pinocchio noticed a teeny light glowing near the tail and walked carefully toward it. There, working by light of candle, sat Geppetto. "Father, what are you doing here?" Pinocchio shouted joyfully. "My son, is it really you?" Geppetto cried. "I'll never leave you again," Pinocchio sobbed as he threw his arms around his father's neck. "But what happened? How did you end up in here?" "As soon as you left, I went searching for you everywhere, on land and then by sea. My boat got caught in a storm and was swallowed by the whale. Luckily, I saved some food and my writing desk," Geppetto explained. "We must escape, father. The next time the whale opens its mouth, we can tiptoe over its tongue," Pinocchio said. "But I cannot swim. Save yourself, son, and leave me," Geppetto said. "I'll carry you on my back then. We'll manage somehow," Pinocchio insisted. So they set out, careful not to tickle the whale's throat. Once at the teeth, Pinocchio jumped out with Geppetto on his back. Pinocchio soon grew very tired, but he refused to give up. He swam all night until they reached dry land. By then, Geppetto was so cold that he was shivering violently. Pinocchio managed to get Geppetto home and put him to bed, but there was no food in the house. Pinocchio soon found a farmer who was willing to give him milk in exchange for work. The farmer's donkey was lame, so every day from dawn until noon, Pinocchio pulled a yoke over his teeny shoulders and turned the grist mill for the farmer. And every day at noon he took Geppetto a warm cup of fresh milk. Pinocchio spent the afternoons at Geppetto's bedside weaving baskets to sell. With the money he earned, he bought food for his father. "Do you feel stronger, father?" Pinocchio asked Geppetto. "Thanks to you, my boy, I'm as well as an old man can be," Geppetto said. One day, the hawk from the castle of the Blue Fairy came to see Pinocchio. "The Blue Fairy is ill, Pinocchio, and she hasn't enough money to buy medicine," the hawk said sadly. "My poor Blue Fairy," Pinocchio cried. "I can help her, Hawk. See, I have some coins tucked away for an emergency. Take them to her, and come every day for more, until she's well again." "Bless you, Pinocchio," said Hawk, and he flew away. Pinocchio worked longer for the farmer in the mornings and stayed up half the night making baskets, but he worked happily. At last, he was repaying everyone's kindness. He sent as much money as he could to the Blue Fairy and continued to take care of old Geppetto. One night, soon after, Pinocchio dreamed of the Blue Fairy. "My dear child, your kindness will be rewarded. I am well now, Pinocchio, and I offer you a gift in return," she said sweetly. When Pinocchio awoke and looked at his reflection in the mirror, he saw something miraculous. He was a real boy with golden brown hair and shiny blue eyes, and his nose was just right. He couldn't believe his good fortune. "Father, look at me!" cried Pinocchio in excitement. Geppetto had changed too. Overnight, he had grown younger and stronger. He was so full of energy that he lifted Pinocchio right off the floor to hug him. My boy, at last you have finally proven to yourself that when a naughty boy becomes good, his whole life can change." "And what of Pinocchio the puppet?" asked the real Pinocchio. They found him sitting on a chair in the corner. "How silly I was then! How happy I am now to be a real son to such a wonderful father," Pinocchio said. And Geppetto and Pinocchio went on to have a long life together, filled with happy adventures. Well, that ends our story. I hope you enjoyed this jewel of a classic story with Pinocchio in this episode. I hope you got a lot of life lessons from it because there were many in here. One of the biggest ones, I think, was the one about lies. You want to stay away from lies as much as you can because they have a tendency of getting out of control, like Pinocchio's nose. So until next time, my young readers, I am your darling little narrator, out.